Something that I'll admit I'm still not quite used to, and over the last few years still sneaks up on me this time of year every year for the last couple of years, is these coaches starting to be fired earlier and earlier now. And there's a few reasons for this. I think one of the obvious ones, you got with the advent of early signing day now, the second week of December. Some schools like to make their moves earlier, end of October, beginning of November, whatever. Maybe they can get another coach in place or promote at least an interim to then try to hang on to that recruiting class, right? You get basically a month to sort of convince your recruits to stay on board type of deal. Whereas if you wait till the end of the season to fire your coach, which is like the first week in December, signing day is a week away at that point. Just gives you no time, right? So by firing coaches now, these teams have a 5 or a 6 week kind of lead in to both start their coaching search, maybe even interview possible candidates, and to reassure the recruits. And the other thing is that just everybody wants to be first, it seems like, right? If you're the first one to fire your coach, then in theory, you've got the entire landscape of coaches to choose from in terms of filling that job, right? If you're the last team to fire your coach, then a lot of the coaches that are looking to move have already moved and the positions have already been filled. So it kind of sneaks up on me all the time. And of course, we had Jimbo a couple of days ago. And then this morning we find out about Zach Arnett, the head coach at Mississippi State. Zach Arnett was put in a almost unwinnable position. And I'm not even talking about wins and losses on the field. I mean, it was around this time last year, Mike Leach just unexpectedly passed away towards the end of the season, or right after the season, I guess. And Mississippi State was just in an impossible position. Nothing that happens, nothing football related is anywhere close to as important as life or death, and we don't pretend that it is. But the reality is, Mississippi State is a huge institution, and they have to have a football coach. They couldn't really go out and have a full-on legitimate coaching search. The optics wouldn't have looked good, and it was kind of late in the coaching cycle last year. They just were put in a bad situation. So rather than do any of that, they just promoted Zach Arnett, who was the defensive coordinator at the time, to head coach. And I don't want to say it was just an automatic one-and-done deal from the beginning, but it was pretty widely assumed and pretty widely known that unless some miracle happened, Zach Arnett winning 10 or more games this year, that Mississippi State was probably going to have a full-on coaching search at the end of this season for Mike Leach's kind of permanent replacement. And we find out this morning that is what's going to happen. Of course, Mississippi State did not have a very good year. And again, I don't put that on Zach Arnett really at all. A lot of times when a coach, school will hire a coach, people come out with opinions. Well, I think it's a good hire. I think it's a bad hire. I think he's going to succeed. I don't think he's going to succeed. There wasn't a lot of that kind of talk around Zach Arnett because, again, it was kind of just known that, man, look, this is a horrible situation Ole Miss finds themselves in. Their coach unexpectedly passed away. They just kind of promoted this guy. And like I said, it was kind of known all throughout the year, I think, that this is where we were going to end up with Mississippi State. As far as who they're going to go out and get, I don't have any idea. I mean, I know every time a coach gets fired, the first question everybody wants to ask is, well, who are they going to hire? Who's going to replace them? I don't know. And I can rattle off the same list of names that you're going to hear for every coach opening. I mean, but what's the point? We'll wait. We'll see what names leak out. Who they interview, which way they decide to go, whatever. I heard Mike Bobo's name pop up, and I've heard Glenn Schumann's name pop up. That's Georgia's offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. I don't know about either of those, to be honest. I don't know that Mike Bobo's looking for a head coaching job. It doesn't even have anything to do with whether I want to keep Bobo at Georgia or not, which I do. I don't know. He's been down that road. It didn't work out well for him. And, the reality is not all coordinators are great head coaches. And I'm not saying that Mike Bobo will never be a successful head coach anywhere, no matter what, no matter where he goes. But I have my doubts, I'll be honest. It could be that he's one of these guys that's just meant to be a coordinator. In the same way that I feel like Will Muschamp is just meant to be a defensive coordinator, right? I love Will Muschamp. I don't want to lose Will Muschamp at UJ. I like having Muschamp at UJ on staff. Wouldn't want to have Muschamp as my head coach, you know. And I'm kind of that way about Bobo too. Now, Glenn Schumann, I do think he's potentially head coach material. Now, we don't know. He hasn't had an opportunity. Muschamp and Bobo have been down the head coaching road. We kind of saw how it went. Schumann has not had that opportunity yet, and it's widely assumed that he will at some point. Will it be now with Mississippi State? That I have no idea. Don't know. It's not a surprise to me as a Georgia fan. And if you're a fan of any team that is consistently performing well, top 10 year in and year out, then you already know every coach on your staff at some point is fair game to be kind of poached by somebody else, right? I mean, Alabama goes through this, Ohio State goes through this, Michigan, everybody goes through this, who all of your top 10 programs, If you've got a really good team and a really good program, other schools and other programs look at that and they go, well, go get me some of their coaches, So you're always going to be losing coordinators. You're always going to be losing coaches when your team is doing really well. So it doesn't surprise me to hear some of those names mentioned. I don't think Mississippi State is going to be in the running for some of the kind of fantasy names that are going to float around, maybe with Texas A&M or some of the other high-profile openings that may come up down the road. You're not going to hear Urban Meyer attached to Mississippi State. You're not going to hear Deion Sanders attached to Mississippi State. Things like that. So these just kind of pie-in-the-sky type names that you're going to hear associated with the bigger openings. I don't think you hear those. But it got me thinking, so that's 2 SEC coaches being replaced within the SEC. Will there be any more this season? Does anybody think there are any other SEC coaches that are in danger of losing their job between now and next season? I don't. You start, when you think about this, you of course start with the teams that are bad. South Carolina, I don't think they're looking to move off of Beamer right now. I really don't. And nor do I think they should. So I think Beamer, I don't think he's going anywhere. I don't think he's getting fired. I think he'll be back next year. Obviously, Drinkwitz at Missouri is not going anywhere. They're having a really good year. Tennessee just gave Heupel a big extension. They're stuck with him. Stoops at Kentucky, that's going to be up to Stoops, not Kentucky. Kentucky obviously is going to keep Stoops as long as they can. I don't know whether Mark Stoops is ever going to decide to try to take a stab at maybe a bigger position with another, somewhere, a bigger program somewhere. Don't know. But I don't think he'll be leaving Kentucky this year. Florida and Billy Napier, well, he's getting fired next year. I've talked about that a million times. This is year 2 for Napier. They're not going to fire him this year, even though Florida's going to end the season on a 5-game losing streak. They've already lost 3, Georgia, Arkansas, LSU. They play on the road at Missouri this week, loss. Next week they play Florida State, loss. They're going to end the season on a 5-game losing streak, 5-7. They're not going to fire him in year 2. They're going to bring him back next year. They're going to fire him after next year when he's 5-7 again, or 4-8. No, he's just going to be terrible next year too. So he won't be fired this year. Moving over to the West, Auburn just brought in Hugh Freeze. Saban's not going anywhere at Alabama unless he chooses to. Look, Saban could retire at any time. He could retire today. He could retire tomorrow. He could retire a month from now. He could retire 5 years from now. Nobody knows that but Saban. But of course, it'll be Saban's choice when he leaves. He's not getting fired. Just forget that. The Mississippi schools talked about Mississippi State. Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss, again, that will be Lane's choice, not Ole Miss. Ole Miss will keep Lane as long as Lane wants to stay there, at least for now. If Lane leaves, it'll be of his own free will, his own choosing. Arkansas is an interesting one to keep an eye on. In fact, if there's a team in the SEC that I was going to put money on, maybe Arkansas goes a different direction than Sam Pittman. I'm not 100% convinced Arkansas is going to part ways with Sam Pittman, but I think Sam Pittman's probably the coach in the SEC right now that's the closest to being let go this season, considering we already lost Jimbo and Zach Arnett. So kind of moving around, Clemson, not Clemson, I mean the ACC. Babers at Syracuse, they're going to keep him. Narduzzi at Pitt. That could be an interesting situation to keep an eye on. He sort of irritated a lot of the players a couple of weeks ago. Seems to be like some sort of internal friction there. So maybe Narduzzi at Pitt. Moving over to the Big Ten. James Franklin's not going anywhere at Penn State. They just locked him into a huge deal. I mean, he's there he's going to have to change offensive coordinators, which he's already fired his one for this year. We'll see what he gets, but he's not going anywhere. Loxley at Maryland, no. God, the rest of the Big Ten is so bad outside of Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. Honestly, other than the schools that just hired a coach, Nebraska, Wisconsin, Northwestern, other than that, it wouldn't surprise me really to see any other school go in a different direction. They're all so bad. Pac-12, Dan Lanning at Oregon is a hot name. He's not going to get fired clearly, but he may get poached. Kalen DeBoer at Washington, same thing. He's not getting fired, but he might get poached. Lincoln Riley, NFL. Again, I think there's more coaches that may willingly leave schools than there are coaches that will get fired kind of around the country. Big 12. Gundy at Oklahoma State appears to want to live. He wants to die there, apparently. Did hear his name attached to Texas A&M, though. What do y'all think about that? Gundy to Texas A&M? I don't know about that. I don't know. We'll see. Dave Aranda at Baylor's not working out well. Texas Tech's got a fairly new coach, as does TCU. What else we got over there? You got the sort of new teams: Cincinnati, Houston, BYU, Central Florida. Goose Malzahn at Central Florida. Don't see him going anywhere. I don't know. We'll see. What do y'all think? Who are the next coaches? Which coaches right now have their head on the chopping block? Not necessarily talking about coaches that will choose to leave, because the list is literally endless on that. I mean, if the right school calls, almost any coach would leave, with the exception of a few, right? But let me know down below, which coaches do y'all think are in danger now of getting fired, between now and the end of the season, or right after the end of the season? Who do y'all think could be the next ones to get fired? Let me know.